for another time. I'd like to introduce my wife of 55 years, Carol. The issues are alive and well, the spirit is alive and well. Matter of fact, not only is it alive and well, it's growing by leaps and bounds. It's been a tough struggle, but we will become noticed because what is we have in Washington today, it's not working, it's failing, and they have to come our way. They have to look to the ideas of liberty to bring this country out of the doldrums, and I predict that's what's going to happen. It is wonderful. I've been talking about these issues for a long time. I also love medicine, practiced medicine for a long time. I've been in Congress for 4 terms. We went back to medicine, but I thought maybe the country's ready, maybe these changes will occur. And that was in 97. And in 1997, I was a bit disappointed. There really wasn't. But there's something different going on right now. It started about 4 years ago. I think what's happened is the recognition by just about everybody in this country there's something seriously flawed with the government that we have today, and we have to change it. That's what I think. Status quo, manage it this way. It's never, should we be managing things? Should we be in these wars? Should they be attacking our civil liberties? It's always, if you elect me, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to manage things differently. What we need is a lot less government management of our lives and a lot more individuals running the world. The one thing, though, is, and I'm convinced, if you're a constitutional president, you really can't say that. Because the president is not supposed to be a king. The president is not supposed to say enforce law and order. He's not supposed to go to war on his own. He's supposed to only go to war when the people endorse the war and the Congress votes for it. Somebody outside this country, like the United Nations or NATO, they don't have But no, a president can't and shouldn't even try to run the world. I mean, we have enough job trying to run our own personal lives, so we shouldn't pretend we know what to tell other people to do. The president shouldn't assume to run your life. It's your life. You should run your life as you please. If you make mistakes, they're your mistakes. If you're successful, you should reap the benefits of your success. To make sure that environment is correct, that you do have freedom and this acceptance of property rights. But if you don't have that, and you can't expect a president to come in and say, under the conditions of economic intervention to run the economy, that it's only a decision that you argue, I can run the economy better than this guy, I can run the economy better. The president can't run the economy. The people have to run the economy. Many years ago, and that's the issue of money. We all want prosperity. We don't have prosperity now, and what we have is precarious because there's a misunderstanding on economics. But basically, the people in Washington, even though they do things wrong, people aren't against prosperity. But one thing with certainty, and I decided this in the late 60s, 1970s, early 70s, when I started studying monetary policy. You cannot have a sound economy, you can't have a wealthy nation if you don't have sound money. Of obeying the Constitution says the states cannot use anything other than silver and gold as legal tender. So we obey that. We'll have some money. It wasn't an accident that we had some money put into the Constitution explicitly. It was one of the things that the founders put in because they had runaway inflation with the continental dollar. So they put in there, only gold and silver can be legal tender. There can be no printing press money, and there is no authority for a central bank. So therefore, what are we doing? Why have we allowed this to happen? For 100 years now, we have allowed the Federal Reserve to exist, and look at what they've given us. This is one place where we make tremendous progress with the people, because today, for the first time in the history of the Federal Reserve, which is 100 years old, today, the Federal Reserve, in their monetary manipulations, they're creating of bubbles and creating a recession. It is now an issue that almost all Americans know about today. We have to make them open the books and find out what they've been up to. Who do they take care of? Is it Wall Street? Is it Goldman Sachs and all the banks and the military? To do it in secret and for us to allow them to get away with this is beyond. I don't think we will have a republic until we know exactly who's printing the money, why they're printing money, who they're bailing out, and who they're taking care of. The attitudes changed. They changed about what the role of government ought to be. Our founders fought a revolution. They decided that the role of government wasn't all that complex. They said the role of government should be to protect liberty. No more complex than that. Protect liberty. That's what all political action should be. Working to protect individual liberty, not collective liberty. Liberty comes to us as individuals, not because we belong to a group. And everybody should have their liberty. Social, personal liberty is not different from economic liberty. Today, some people defend economic liberty. Oh yeah, we like free enterprise and we'll try to lower taxes and things. And then another group said, no, civil liberties are important, and they will. But each group will not protect both of them. The economic libertarians will protect social liberty, and vice versa. But liberty is one unit. It comes to us as an individual. We have a right to our life. We own our life. We have our liberty. We should have the right to keep our property, and we should have economic liberty as well. It brings people together. This is a magnificent thing. People use their liberties differently. Most of us can understand rather clearly about religious freedom. We have religious freedom. We have freedom not to practice religion. We have freedom to pick and choose our religion. That's a pretty important right to have. But we don't, we don't object to people who do something different than us. But too often, when it comes to other social policies, our habits and our social activities, all of a sudden we say, oh, if we give them too much freedom, they might do something that we don't approve of. And they think that liberty means that you endorse something. Not necessarily. Because we believe in religious liberty, that doesn't mean that you have to endorse anybody else's religion. You just endorse your own, and you want your freedom to practice your own religion. Steal from other people and damage their property, it's your life, and it's your responsibility. So all of a sudden, if you understand this, this brings people of all walks of life together, because they will use their liberty in a different way, and it shouldn't be offensive. You say, well, you're tolerating too much. Well, toleration doesn't mean endorsement. What you're endorsing and what you really want is the principle of liberty. And this is what creates prosperity and creative activity, and it allows this society to be nonviolent. This endorses the nonviolent approach. Yeah. If you apply that domestically, just think of what it's like if you apply it internationally. Subject of the golden rule. But the golden rule is endorsed by all the major religions. It's not an outrageous religious statement. It's just a good common sense that all religions endorse. That you treat other people the way you would like to be treated. So my suggestion at the debate was, what would it be like if we treated other nations exactly the way we would like to be treated? We own the world, that the world is ours, and now we have 900 bases. We have 130 countries that were involved, and you'd think we'd own the Persian Gulf. But what if other nations thought they owned the Gulf of Mexico? I think there would be a little bit of objection. But this whole idea, that we are an exceptional nation. People use this in a perverse manner. Yes, we're an exceptional nation. This thought has been around a long time, even back with Woodrow Wilson. We are such an exceptional nation. We do such wonderful things, and we understand democracy. So we're going to invade countries, use force, use guns, occupy their country, and force them to have elections. And then when they have elections, then they elect the people we didn't like, so we ignore their elections. We end up with more enemies than we need. We just don't need more enemies, more killing, more Americans dying, more people from around the world dying. Drones now bombing almost, they can bomb any spot in the world. And what's going on now? Now they're talking about having thousands of 30,000 drones patrolling our skies in the United States. That the military now, with the canceling out of posse comitatus, that the military can arrest any American citizen if they become a suspect. They don't get charged, they're not offered an attorney, they can be put in a secret prison and considered and kept indefinitely. That is not part of American tradition. tradition, that has to be. Because we have been careless in the way we've gone to war, up until World War II, we declared war. And some of them shouldn't have been declared, but at least we declared them, and we fought them, and we won them, and we came home. But lately, that hasn't been the case. Since World War II, we haven't declared one war, and the wars are just continuous. They've been very bad these last 10 years. The World War II, fighting both the Japanese and the Germans, was less than 4 years, and there was a victory declared. But today, we've been in Afghanistan for 12 years, and now the reports are coming out. Some of the military people are speaking out, and they're saying, it's all a fake and a fraud. There's been no progress in Afghanistan. The troops absolutely should come home. Somebody asked me once, when should we bring them home? I said, as soon as we get the ships over there. They should come home, and we shouldn't be over there. We shouldn't be pushing ourselves around the world. We should be offering what the founders told us to offer, what's available in the Constitution: friendship and peace. Friendship and trade. Impressive things that impressed on my mind during the 1960s was that I was drafted during the Cuban crisis. I was in the Air Force for 5 years. But I didn't have to go to Vietnam, but obviously that was a big event in the 1960s. And we were there to stop the domino effect of communism. Of course, we lost that war. We lost 60,000 men and women that lost their lives, and all the wounded and the tragedies, and the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Vietnamese that died with the 20 years of war by the French in America. All that to impose our will on a country that had a civil war going on. And what happened when we lost and left? All of a sudden, there was no domino effect. The domino effect was capitalism that we were giving up on and they were picking up on. China ends up being our banker now, and we're trading partners with the Vietnamese. We go back and forth and trade and invest, and we're not killing each other. So just think how much can be achieved in peace that is never achieved in war. War is a negative. It's always a negative. Why is it they will ask me, they say, Ron, you're doing pretty well in the campaign, but you would do so much better if you would just change your foreign policy. I said, if you understood what was going on and you would come out to an event like this, that's why the people like this campaign. It goes to our campaign. We get more money than all of us put together. So the evidence is very strong that the American people are getting tired of the war. I think this is part of what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years. The freedom movement has been creeping along, but there's been an explosion of interest in the defense of individual liberty. But what happened 4 or 5 years ago in 07, 08 was the collapse of the economy. And people know how serious it is, and that we're not out of the doldrums yet. And they know also that the people who are benefiting in the financial bubble now are they're the ones who got the bailout. And guess what? The middle class got stuck with the bill. The middle class got stuck with the bill. They lost Now, I saw a statistic today. It was a poll by one of the major networks. I haven't studied it, but there was one part of it that I sort of liked. And they were gauging all the candidates and their acceptance by the middle class. And our campaign won the acceptance by the middle class, right above all the rest. In the history of the world. But the evidence now is absolutely certain that the middle class is shrinking. It started to shrink even before '07. It started to shrink in the year 2000. At the time of the NASDAQ bubble, the jobs have not come back. And we have been in the doldrums. And now the prosperity that we have today, which is still a fair amount, it's based on debt. That is a big problem. And that's why it's not so. In the productivity, the real production that made America great financially, the productivity is not here. It's overseas due to bad policies, bad monetary policy. Consuming our wealth in wars that don't need to be fought. Consumption, there's been a lot of people who have been taught over the many decades that war is good for the economy. They still teach that. And they still teach, and they'll say, well, isn't that when the Depression ended? No, it wasn't. When it lowered unemployment, but you hired 10 million people and put guns in their hands and call them employed. That's hardly fruitful employment. The Depression actually ended after the war, a couple years afterwards, when all the troops came home. 10 million people came home. And the Keynesians said, oh, there's going to be another depression to come home. We have to have job programs. We have to do all these things. Because how will we ever, assimilate having so many people just coming home? They're getting out of the military. 10 million came home. And guess what they did with the budget? They cut the budget by 60%. They cut taxes by 30%. Guess what? The depression ended there. Years to cut the budget by $1 trillion. And very serious, and they're not being nasty. They'll say, yes, but isn't that going to be harmful? That being employed by the government isn't this beneficial to the economy? The answer is no. Because if you have bureaucrats interfering with your life and interfering with the economy, that's not productive. So they take the money from the people, and that's a loss. Then they put it in the hands of a bureaucrat who interferes with your life. That's another loss. You've lost twice. If you take that $1 trillion and put it back into your pockets, and you spend the money, it will be spent much more wisely. In bringing people into believing that this thing can last forever. Thomas Jefferson didn't even want the government to be able to borrow money. That would have been a good idea. Today, we'd be forced to pay our way, whether it's the war or welfare, on a daily basis. People would rebel because they would be infuriated on knowing how much taxes they have to pay. So, no, it's delayed. We borrow money. That means you can delay the payment, and then we print the money, and that delays the bad effects from it. But, it used to be that I said, and many people still tend to say it, they say, we can't spend this money today because we're going to give it to the next generation. Well, I've modified that a little bit. We are the next generation. They don't work real hard, but they've been living on They buy a house and the house doubles in prices, so they borrow more money. Well, that's all come to an end. So when an individual does that, what does common sense tell you? Well, if they want to do it honorably, they're going to pay down their debt. They're going to get another job and live beneath their means and start spending less money, or if necessary, somebody's going to declare bankruptcy. But here, our country gets into trouble because of too much spending, too much debt, too much borrowing, too much printing money, and too much regulation. So they say, yep, there's a crisis here. So what do? They increase the spending, increasing the debt, increasing the printing press money, increase the regulation. And they say, I wonder why it's not working. They don't have the biggest idea what kind of creative energy comes from people who are free.